She's muted. Okay, Charles. Charles, let's go. We'll start off with the screen of grace after meals, benching. Birchas Hamazon, as you said.
Okay.
Now, we'll go to that's the first blessing. Let's go to the beginning of the second blessing. Okay, stop. Oh, they don't have English here.
Yes,
I don't care, but
they do. It's down at the bottom somewhere.
that's so stupid.
No, I thought I saw English a second ago. That's so weird. Yeah.
It is weird. It had it right after the first paragraph.
Yeah, that's so weird.
Well,
it's right here. Look at that.
So only the first paragraph has.
That's weird. Safari is.
Okay, right there. Stop there then. That is very strange, by the way. Okay, so yeah, a little upsetting here, but okay, we'll go through this. I wonder what they did in English. That's why I was curious. Well, someone's got to have. Hold on, English Siddur. Someone's got to have an English Siddur next to them, no? The Roth, they do nothing in this class. Roth, do you have an English Siddur next to you?
Job giving us a hard time, okay, and I apologize, but we're still trying to figure out how to get in.
You're in. What are you talking about?
They're kidding around. Okay, so now it sounds like this. So this is right in front of the screen here is the beginning of the second blessing, right? Second blessing has two paragraphs normally, except as you can see toward the bottom, except Hanukkah and Purim, you can add something in. There's normally a second paragraph. Now, if you would, it's a fascinating thing about tell you that I have to be honest. You know, I always thank the class for things I wouldn't have known. I did not know what I'm about to tell you, and I'm not sure how I got so far in life without even realizing it. I only knew the Shulchan Aruch portion. The Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of Laws, says like this, that when someone reads this second blessing, the paragraph in front of them, if they do not say the words, Charles, if you could circle it from the second to the last line, those two last words, right? From the Al Barischa, on my screen it's easy. The second line, the last two words, the Al Barischa. Go up 2 lines. You're moving over to the right. Now the second line, unless you have a second line, might be doing the mine. The last two words in the line of Al Barischa.
I see.
See that?
Yeah, these are different.
Okay, that also, and that's fine. And then the 3 words before that. Those 3 words you're doing now, and the 3 words before that.
Oh, this one right here. Oh, okay, this one right here.
Okay, now that word means we don't have the English here. That means
and these over here.
Is yeah, perfect. So what it means in English, something out again, unless Eric has the English Siddur there, it means the brischa means, I don't know if they're going to say the covenant or the circumcision. I don't know what they would say here. Shechas, the first words on the new line. No, leave the other one there, Charles. We need both.
Okay, sorry.
So it's fine. Shechasam to b'fserenu. I don't know if they would say sealed or marked on our bodies. Ba'al Torascha, and on the Torah, Shalom that you taught us. If you would open a Shulchan Aruch Code of Laws, it would say these words. If you say grace after meals, benching, Birchas Hamazon, if you would say it, and you did not say these words that are circled here on the screen, if you did not say those words, you have not fulfilled the obligation of benching. That's what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. Code of Laws, Rav Yosef Cairo, Ramaz not argument. That's based on an open Talmudic passage. If you skip these words, you go back. And as we've spoken about many a times in this class, by the way, many a times, is that very few blessings are biblical in nature. Most blessings we make are rabbinic in nature. Grace after meals, benching, is one of the few biblical ones, which means when in doubt, you got to go strict side and say it again. So if you got to the end of benching and you don't know if you said these words that are in red, circled, squared, whatever you call it, marked, these 6 words, you have to bench the entire thing again. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says openly. Now, what's amazing, keep it all up in red. Carl, you can do different colors, actually, just
yes.
the cuteness of it.
Yes.
What's amazing, if you open up a Talmudic passage, go to Carl, different color. If you open up a Talmudic passage where this Gemara is from, what it says is this. Charles, the from the word Eretz on the first line, those 4 words. Yes. The Talmud says, if you don't say these 4 words, you have not fulfilled your obligation. The Shulchan Aruch does not say this, as I just said. Code of Laws does not say this. The Gemara says it. Code of Laws switches, or whatever it also discusses, instead of the laws in blue, it says the laws in red. Open up Mishnah Berurah, Chavetz Chaim, the Holy Chavetz Chaim, and he says, by the way, don't think reading a Code of Laws is good enough. Don't think you just read a Code of Laws that says if you're missing the red words, you're no good. I got bad news for you. The Code of Laws is telling you that the red words are a novelty ruling. But of course, if you miss the blue words, you're out. Now, again, if you would just read a regular Shulchan Aruch, you never would have reached this conclusion. And if you read the Talmud, the source of it, it would make more sense. But if you just read, in fact, the Rambam only says the blue, not the red. So when you're reading a Shulchan Aruch Code of Laws, most people do that. The Chabad guys do Rambam, but Shulchan Aruch says if you don't say the red word, start over. Mr. Brewer right away says no. That doesn't mean, and Mr. Brewer is not himself. Mr. Brewer is quoting previous sources from 2 years ago. He says not the red words, the blue words. If you don't say the blue words are so obvious, we don't have to say it in law. Imagine that. Imagine here just a shout out to the Rolfs here. Imagine I'm telling you this: if you don't say the blue laws, the blue words in benching with the right proper intent, you did not fulfill your obligation. And by the way, the Shulchan Aruch Code of Laws that wrote down literally 8 volume of work doesn't have to tell you that because that's so obvious law. Everyone knows that. None of us walking into this class might have known this, but the Shulchan Aruch is saying it's so obvious that everyone knew this already. I'm just going to tell you the novelty ruling that none of us knew, by the way, because none of us knew the novelty ruling. The novelty ruling is the 6 words in red. If they're not said, they're also not fulfilling your obligation. So I figured we'll go to the obvious law, since it might be based on this week's parsha, and we're going to tie in with these 4 words. So Eric, did you get a siddur yet? No reaction out of Eric. I see his face with the bushy beard, but no reaction. Did you get an English siddur yet, Eric? I'm still walking around.
I'm still trying to get that. I'm still trying to get it on something other than my phone. What do you want, Rabbi? A siddur?
Do you have a siddur with English? So we don't have English here.
Yes, a siddur with English.
Oh, you're doing Charles.
Hold on. I think I can get English. Hold on. I've got another screen. Let me see what I can get this in English.
A siddur with English.
So these words. So okay, so I just want to know how they type the words here. So go back to Charles. Now you're all marked up in the wrong place. All right. So now in English, what I would say. I don't know how they're going to do it in English. Goldberg, how do you read these words? Goldberg knows Hebrew. She spent a year in Israel. Goldberg, how do you read those 4 words in blue in English? How would you? I don't know how. Eretz means the land. Chemdah would be what? Desirous.
Coveted.
I see her mouth moving. I don't see her, but I don't hear anything.
Coveted?
Oh, coveted. That's it. Greenberg said coveted. Toiva means what in English? What Greenberg? What would they say in English? Toiva means?
I mean, I guess just good.
I don't want what the article's doing. Good. And urachava means what?
I mean, maybe wide.
Goldberg, how come you're speaking but nothing's coming out?
I'm hearing it. You're not hearing it? I'm hearing him.
I don't hear. No, I hear him, not her.
Oh.
Okay, Eric, okay, these are the 4 words. I don't know what they mean now in English.
Here.
Eric, what do those 4 words mean in English? I thank you. So now these 4.
Here.
Now again, these 4. The 4 words in benching. These 4 words. Eretz Chemdah means you're saying coveted, a desirous land. Toiva, that's good. Urachava, that's wide. Maybe expansive would be a better word. But I'm making it up right now. How come I didn't bring a siddur with me? Hold on. Siddur in this room here. 20,000 storm and no siddur.
A desirable good and spacious land.
Spacious. Okay. So now everyone knows those words now in English because you could bench in English, obviously. A desirous, good, spacious land. If you do not say these 4 words, now say has to mean with intent, then every grace after meals you said until now, according to the obvious statement by the Chavas Chaim, you have not fulfilled your obligation. Now something we started discussing many times in this class, never got to the end of it, is that every word that we bench and every word that we pray, if it's not Tehillim, obviously Tehillim is obvious, it's from David, but every word that the rabbis made up in that davening can be analyzed to the nth degree. They have to be sourced. They have to be understood. Why this specific word, not a different word. All of it has to be that way. So we're going to discuss tonight in this Tuesday night class, because it's going to be based on the Spies in a second, these 4 words that are crucial to fulfilling the biblical obligation of benching, which I don't know how often you do it, once a day, twice a day, once a week for sure, on Shabbos. Here it goes. Now, Charles, let's get back to the Shemois. Shemois chapter 3. Exodus chapter 3. Now, this is where most of the people begin the sourcing of this phrase that we have in front of us. Chapter 3. Now, I think it's verse 8, but maybe verse 7. Now, here we have the famous story of Moshe Rabbeinu meeting God by the burning bush. And right here, in verse 8, right there. God is speaking here. A little more down in English. Oh, here. What did he just say? Eric, we are consistent. I have come down to rescue them, meaning the Jewish people, from the Egyptians, to bring them out to the land, as he just said correctly, to that land, out of that land to a good and spacious land, which were the words Eric said, good and spacious. So here we have the first time that the Torah discusses the land of the Jews leaving Egypt. It mentions these words, good and spacious. Charles, go back to the screen because I heard someone was about to ask that question to the old one a second ago. And here we have by the Birchas Hamazon, we have the same phrase. When we discuss the land, we discuss not only the land being the land, but the land being spacious, and good, but we added in one other word. Eric, what was the word you said
So
before
you
that's not
wanna-
here now?
Desirable, good, and spacious.
So there's a problem here. All of the early commentators, going back to the we're talking about early now, to the 11, 12, 1300s, they all say that where did this phrase come from that we say in grace after meals and benching? It came from the pasuk of Hashem, first time talking to Moses, telling Moses, by the way, this is how we define the land as a good and spacious land. But as Eric said correctly, there's a problem here. When we have our benching, our birch samazon, we added in a phrase. We added in the word what? Chemdas, Eretz Chemdah, a desirous land of good and spacious. So our question right now, what we start with, which everyone, the early commentators, 14, 1500s, 1600s, ask right away, wait a second. When the rabbis, going back 2,000 years ago, set up the benching, and they took this phrase, speaking about the land of Israel, as good and spacious, what about desirous? Where'd that come from? I have big news for all of you here. Nowhere in the 5 books of Moses does it have the phrase, it's a desirous land. Nowhere. Now, it does say it in Psalms, which we'll get to hopefully, but it does not say anywhere in the 5 books that it's the desirous land. So where did this phrase come from? Go, Charles.
Well, isn't the second prayer from Yehoshua, that goes into the land?
Yes, excellent.
So maybe it's from his book somewhere. It's not in the 5 books of Moses, but maybe it's in his book. The 6th
excellent
book.
Paul. Just to back up what Charles is saying, because Goldberg, one valedictorian, she does not know what you're talking about. It goes like this. The first blessing of grace after meals, first blessing, talking about God feeding people, the one that we had in English before, according to the Talmud, was authored by Moses himself. The second blessing we're discussing tonight, Charles said correctly, was authored by Joshua, because it's about the land. The first one's about feeding people. It's about the mun from heaven. That's Moses. Second one is discussing the land. And the third blessing is going to be Solomon. We'll get to that later. So we have a very good point. So now Charles is wrong, but at least the thinking process is great. So I said a second ago that we'll get to in a second, that in the second land, in the second blessing that discusses this phrase desirous land, we said desirous land does not appear anywhere in the 5 books. Charles right away said, wait a second, we don't need it in the 5 books. Joshua was the man who created the second blessing. Maybe the word desirous land is in Joshua's book. Great point by Charles, but he happens to be wrong. It's nowhere in Joshua's book as well. So we are having a double question here. First question, we're going to get to Eric in a second. First question is, why does it say the word desirous land? Where does it come from? Why is it important here? And more, we're going to get to the second question now. If I have to ask you a throw-out, easy schmeezy question, easy to answer. When we talk about the land of Israel, we don't want to have Abby Goldberg about the flag. No, we don't want to hear about that stuff. What about when we discuss the Torah discussing the land of Israel? How do we define the land of Israel? Stephen, a softball question. How do we always define the land of Israel?
I can't. I just struck out.
Yeah, you're going to be embarrassed when you hear it. Jake, what do we call the land of Israel always?
Eretz Yisrael.
No. What does the Torah refer to as? Torah doesn't say Eretz Yisrael. That's a modern Orthodox phrase. It's not. I just made it up as a joke. Jake, what do we call it? The land of what? I gave it.
Milk and honey.
The land of milk and honey. Land of milk and honey. So when we're discussing, which is going to be this week's parasha, we're discussing Israel. We always say it's the land of milk and honey. So here we have a double question. We're missing the phrase land of milk and honey. Not only that, we have it called good and spacious, comes from Moses, but the word desirous is not there as well. Eric, do you still have a question?
It wasn't really a question. It's just another translation says precious, good, and spacious.
I like that better, by the way. I like the word precious. It's good. Good. I like that. So, but now we have back to the same thing. Yes, Jake.
Just because you mentioned before that we're going to connect this to the Meraglim, does it have anything to do with the fact to correct their Lashon Hara about the land? So we say it's desirous?
Yes. No, almost.
Okay.
Charles, let's get to the public screen of Pasha Shalach. That's how we fit into this week's Pasha. Now, Pasha Shalach starts right there. I think with 13. I'm going to guess around 18, but I'm guessing. Let's go to verse 18. Because they have to all go, hear the names. They got to come back. Slow. No, they're still going. They're still on the way. No, go down further. 18. Nope, we got to go further down. They didn't even come back yet. Now they're coming back. Now they bring the stuff. Now they hold on. Next, it should be the next one now. Yes, this verse. This is what they said. This is what the spies said. We came to the land you sent us to. It does indeed flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. So now, normally the land of milk and honey is not the only phrase, by the way, it says it. Charles, if you go back to the verse by Shemais a second ago, where God met him, so here it said, I will talk to you. We said two things here. It's the land of good and spacious land. Now we see extra words, a land flowing with milk and honey. So twice we have the Torah saying there's a land of milk and honey. We also have by Moses, the first time it's called good and spacious, but by the benching, we do not say flowing with milk and honey. We do say good and spacious, and we added in a word that's nowhere in the 5 books called desirous. I think that question so far is very clear. From the benching people were not randomly poetic people. We do not believe that at all. Every word was very specific, teaching us valuable lessons, teaching the world valuable lessons that are applicable till today. So the basic questions is, we're missing land of milk and honey, and instead we have desirous, coveted, and good and spacious. Okay, so now we're going to discuss. Now we're going to discuss what Charles began. Now, let's see how to do this the right way. Okay, just as a point to say, by the way, that some of the rabbis going back to pre-1400s say that when it says desirous, what was the other word Eric used? Not desirous. What was Eric's? Precious. Excellent. Precious. Some of the rabbis say, by the way, this is basic when you're praying the words, what you mean. That when you say it's a precious land, the word precious is a euphemism for a land flowing with milk and honey. So it would be all of those things in Parsha Shemais. It would be a land flowing with milk and honey. That's the word precious. We'll have to know why we substituted it in 1 second. And then we'd say a good land and a spacious land as well. So it would be all taken from the verse in Shemais. The problem would be if we don't have it in front of us, all that Chumash will be easier, is that it's out of order. In the pasuk in Shemais, if Charles would be put the pasuk in Shemais on, it first said it's a good and spacious land, and then said milk and honey. When we say grace after meals, we first say it's a desirous land, and then we say good and spacious. So there would be switched the order. So although I can't argue on someone from the 1200s, that's not a wise idea to do. But it is a little interesting that by here we're reading a good and spacious land flowing with milk and honey. You want to separate flowing milk and honey and substitute it with the word coveted or precious or desired. Then it should have said in benching when we put grace after meals, a land that is precious and good and spacious. Why do we do it this way? Okay, so back to
Rabbi,
benching for 1
can I
second.
make a suggestion?
Yes.
Rabbi,
Absolutely, there's many different ways to go. Listen,
why
go ahead,
would,
Stephen, I hear you.
God forbid we should speak as the spies spoke.
Excellent. But wait. Right now, the verse in front of you is not the spies. Wait. You might be right. The verse in front of you
is them
is
coming
Moses.
Back. This is what
Charles,
they said
go back to Stephen could see it again. Go back to Shalach. Excellent, Stephen. So you're saying, Stephen, beautifully. You're saying the reason why we don't want the phrase a land flowing with milk and honey, although God used that exact phrase to Moses 2 years before this event, but since the spies used it, in our grace after meals, we're not going to use it. Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Excellent.
And that would reflect the order too. It's just to distinguish describing the land that we not describe it the way that spies described it when they came back.
Not as good, but yes. So what we don't want is the exact phrase of a land of milk and honey. And by the way, Stephen, the first person said it is the Maharsha. That's 1600s. Excellent. The Maharsha says the reason we don't want to have the exact phrase, a land of milk and honey, even though, again, it's something that we say all the time. I mean, we didn't know it here, but we call it a land of milk and honey. But that's since the spies used that phrase, and we're not going into it right now. They used it in a negative connotation. Even though it seems to be that this phrase is positive, this phrase is not positive, according to the Maharsha and others. Rashi learns this phrase as positively. We're not doing that tonight. But the Maharsha learns this phrase is 100% negative. Since this phrase was negative, they're saying it's a land of milk and honey, but it's missing other things. That's what they meant. It has milk and honey, but it doesn't have the main things. So since that connotation, I'll get you in a second, Jake. Since that connotation is negative, what the spies meant the negative, we don't want to use that phrase when we're praising the land in our grace after meals. Therefore, we substitute it for desirous land, and then we say what God said. That phrase is never ruined. When God said it's good and spacious, that phrase remains till today because the spies didn't necessarily ruin that phrase itself. Jake, go back to benching Charles while Jake speaks.
Am I right? I mean, I could be wrong, but wasn't this also used by when the Jewish people were in the Midbar and they were complaining and they were saying, take us back to Mitzrayim because it's flowing with milk and honey?
Excellent, Jake. Adding on to Stephen's thing, correct. Not only by the spies, that's this week's Parsha, but there are other times, for example, in the fight of Kairach next week, there are going to be other times that they're going to be using the phrase of milk and honey, which seems positive, But just like many ways to read the Torah, it can be negative as well. Yeah, obviously it's positive to say it's that, but it's like once in a while. I mean, Hermes knows this. When someone goes up to Hermes and says, "Hermes, wow, I love that shirt finally." What? Love that shirt finally? What does finally mean? Finally, you dressed well, Hermes. Is that a compliment or not a compliment? Doesn't sound positive. Depends who's saying it. So you finally look good. What? No. I'll tell you a great story here. Great story here. This happened to my wife. I'm thinking of it now. Eric, if you ever in my house again, you could ask my wife the story. My wife was once discussing with her grandmother who's no longer alive with us, and she was discussing something about nose jobs. I don't know exactly what came up. I have no idea. And my wife's grandmother turns to me and goes, "Wow, the one thing you don't need is a nose job." I was like, "What?" Is that a comment? So this is before I'm married. I think it was before I was married. I heard the story when I was married. Something my wife always repeats, that you have to know even how to give a compliment. So the one thing you don't need is a nose job. My wife did not take that as a compliment. Now, so it's the same idea. When you're going around saying, you know what Israel is? Israel is a land of milk and honey. But when the wrong person's saying it, that's negative, therefore we take it out. Excellent. So the first approach now is going to be that really Chemdah means milk and honey. But we don't want to use the phrase milk and honey because milk and honey has a negative connotation to it. Therefore, we only use the next two words, toiva urachava, good and spacious, because that's God still uses 100%. Now, we don't explain yet why it's out of order. Chemdah shouldn't have been first. We're replacing Chemdah, land of milk and honey, should have been after toiva urachava. You're on the right place, Charles, those three words. But desirous is substitute for milk and honey, which is now we're saying because milk and honey has negative connotation. Good and spacious, we don't know what that means yet. What does good mean? What does spacious mean? But good and spacious we keep because that God said, and the Spies never used it negatively. So if you have to know up till now I'm benching, that's what we're doing so far. Milk and honey is really part of Chemdah. We don't use the exact words. Toiva Rechava means, again, good things because we keep it there. Now, but again, it's a little odd that the word Chemdah comes out, and correctly, as Charles pointed out, this entire blessing, I don't know if he made up word by word, but the concept of it was created in the time of Joshua. We're going to have to go to that as well. So Hubner came up with a wild idea. Again, I thank the class because I think God sends me the ideas. Charles, go back to Shalach, but the beginning of it this time. We're going to go to the first verse of Shalach. So probably verse 1. I'm assuming it starts on 1. Yes, you went too far. Oh, no, so after 2. Right there. Is it English? Oh, we don't even need the English. First 3 words of verse 2, Charles. Circle them. Shalach lecha anashim, which in English says, send men to scout the land of Israel, to the land of Canaan. Okay. As we've always said, every word means something in the Torah. And we have a fascinating phrase by one of the great code breakers, we call them, code breakers, the Baal HaTurim. Baal HaTurim is the son of the Rosh. Rosh died in 1327. Baal HaTurim lived after that, and he wrote, obviously, the Torah, which is the code of laws before the Shulchan Aruch came along. And he also has a cryptic code-breaking concept on Al Torah. Very shorthand, really hard to understand, connecting words, connecting ideas, numeric systems, very, very strange things. And here he says something amazing. Charles, if you could do it slowly, the last letter of those 3 words spells a word. Can you figure it out? Hermes is like, I know Hebrew. Hermes, what does that last letter of each of those words spell? Hermes is saying, I wish Rachel was here. I could bother Rachel. So it's a ches, a chaf, and a mem. You know what that spells? Chacham. Wise people. That's what it says. When it says send men to scout the land of Israel, send men, last letters are send wise men. Chacham. That's exactly spells out. Now normally, Chacham, yeah. Now normally when you'd say that, it wouldn't make us feel better or worse. It's like cute. A lot of Baal terms are cute. I don't know what it means. Now I'm going to tell you an amazing story. Many times in this class I've told you that I became over the years a tremendous fan of the Gerah Rebbe, many Gerah Rebbes, but the one who went to Israel during the war. He was took over after his father in 1905. The Imre Yemes, the holy Imre Yemes, Rebbe of Gerah, died during the War of Independence, and I always said that he always was quick with every time people asked him questions, he had genius answers on the spot. I'm gonna tell you an amazing affair. So in 1921, history here. Goldberg's gonna love this. Don't disappear, Goldberg. There's a modern Orthodox scene coming up. In 1921, the Gerah Rebbe left Gerah and made a trip to Palestine. Palestine, even Jake can't say I'm making fun of it then, because that in 1921 it was called Palestine. Nothing I could do about that. So in 1921, he made a trip to Palestine. One of the genius rabbis in 1921 in Palestine, someone that all these the girls in seminaries are probably preaching, probably Jake's place as well, is of course the great Rabbi Rav Kook, K-O-O-K, the holy Rabbi Rav Kook. And the Gerah Rebbe went to visit Rav Kook. Rav Kook was clearly a phenomenal genius, but the Gerah Rebbe was no slouch himself. Now, when he showed up, now this is how it goes. When Stephen goes to Thailand or Tibet and he meets 800-year-old monastery or something, I'm asking him all types of questions. This is what happens when two grand rabbis meet in Israel. Starts like two guys walk into a bar. Here goes Hermes. Two grand rabbis meet in Israel, Palestine. This is how it goes. Rabbi Gerah walks in to Rabbi Kook. Rabbi Kook tells him, Rabbi Gerah, you came to Eretz Yisrael, to Palestine, Israel. The land of Israel has holiness to it. Is that true? So, of course, the land of Israel makes people wise. That's a phrase that you must have heard 1,000 times in life. The ear in Eretz Yisrael, A-I-R, because Goldberg makes funny when I say that word A-I-R, the ear in Israel makes people smart. So the Rav Kook turns to the Gerah Rebbe. Now, Charles, I want a public screen. I want to see everyone's reaction here. I want to see how quick everyone is here. Everyone, face the camera. Sapir speaks Hebrew perfectly. Sapir, I want to see your face for this one. Eric's disappeared. Here goes the question. Grand Rabbi A asked the Gerah Rebbe. You came to Israel. It says you got wiser. Tell me, how did you get wiser while you're here in Israel? No one has a response. Unless my screen froze, nobody has a response. Amazing. So this grant, as I've said 1,000 times, the Imre Emes was so quick with the genius of lines. It's astounding. He has lines with the Chavetz Chaim, quick and genius on multiple levels. I've told you this in the past. I don't know if you guys remember, Charles, remember we always talk about the Imre Emes? The lines were so good on so many levels. This is what he says. He says, the Gemara says, Ovis, Mishnah says, Siyag Lachachma Shtika. Sapir, what does Siyag Lachachma Shtika mean? Siyag Lachachma Shtika, something everyone knows. It's probably in some of the yearbooks. Means a barrier. Siyag means a fence. To make someone seem smart is silence. That's what he answered him. He told him, how did I become smart? Siyag Lachachma Shtika is I'm keeping silent. It's genius. No one's appreciated as much as I am. It's a double level of genius that I am. It's probably 14 levels. One is he's telling him the famous thing, a person becomes smart by keeping silent. Number two, he's telling him, I'm not going to go to the answer. I'm keeping silent. I'm not telling you my personal thing, how I'm proving. Silence is the better answer. I don't have to answer your question. In Israel, you don't have to answer a question. You become Siyag Lachachma Shtika. I'm very excited about this. I don't know. No one else is as excited as me. I guess Jake doesn't hear any Chassidus Rebbe. He's the only one to hear Rav Kook. But anyway, it goes like this. So Hubner wants to say, which makes sense, when we go back and Moses is saying, God's telling Moses, choose wise men, and we said the last letters of wise men spell, choose for yourself men, the last letters spell wise men. What wise men mean is people who know the value of silence. Stephen, you know where this is going now, Stephen, right? When you're picking spies who made a mistake eternally that we suffer till today, what was their problem? The problem is they blabbed. I don't like the word blab on the spies. They're still giants of men. They spoke wrong. That's not even in English. They spoke wrongly. I don't know if that's English either. Goldberg spoke wrongly, even English. Not sure if that's English. They spoke ill of the land. So what God told Moses is pick out people that at the end, last letters, that's why it's at the end of the letters, the last letters, pick someone that at the end will know to keep quiet. These spies entered Israel. They circled Israel for 40 days, and they came back. Did they learn the value of silence? If you had to guess right now. No, they did not learn the value of silence, right? Because when they came back, they spoke too much. So what God was telling him was, pick people that will go to Israel and learn the value of silence. Then when they will return, they won't say things they shouldn't be saying. Now, Moses did that, but it didn't come out that way. He chose people, it didn't work. So now the question becomes, why not? Why didn't it work? Why were the people that Moshe Rabbeinu chose, who he chose people who should learn the concept of being wise, when they came there, they didn't gain the wiseness? So now, Charles, go back to the benching again, please. Now here it goes like this. We asked before that the letter Chemdah, desirous, precious, is before the words Tova and Rechava. Placed before it. Why is that? Why is it placed before? So the answer we're going to say now is like this. The only way you can get to appreciate the land that is good and spacious, which we have to explain what those words mean, maybe not tonight, to explain what good and spacious means. The only way you're going to get there and appreciate it is if you're desiring it beforehand. The first thing is you got to desire the land. If you don't desire something, you will never come to appreciate it because it can hit you in the face and you're not looking for it. So what the problem with the spies were is that Moshe Rabbeinu took people who were wise, who could have gone into the land and learned from the land just by entering into the space of Israel, they should have learned and gained the benefit of silence. But they did not learn that. Why not? Because they didn't go in with the right attitude. They didn't go in desiring it. They didn't go in wanting it. If you want to be successful in anything, any gift that God is giving you, the first thing you have to do is want it. If you want it, there's a chance it could happen. Back to the public screen, Charles, please. So I can see everyone here. So it goes like this again. The spies were chosen, but it doesn't make a difference. When you go into the land, if you're not looking to see the right stuff, everything you're going to see is wrong. The famous story, Goldberg and Hermes Sapir should know it as well. The story is they came into the land and they saw people dying right and left. God made a blessing for them that the people should be passing away in order for no one to be busy with the spies. You know what they looked at it? Negatively. Negative glasses. Negatively means they looked at it that, no, people die on this land. So the idea is, when you're not going in and wanting something, nothing's going to work. Nothing. So here what the lesson is by us now is that we have to know if we want to appreciate the land, the first thing we're going to have to do, and this is what Charles is right about, is we're going to have to desire it. The reason why we're adding in the word desired, not it's a substitute from milk and honey, according to this interpretation. It is not a substitute, right? The reason why when we mention the land is we say the word desirous is to tell us if we want to praise the land, we have to first know, before anything, we desire it. Again, it's not a substitute for milk and honey. So, Charles, back to the benching, just so we can see it now. The desire has to come first in order for us to appreciate. Now, the question becomes, why are we mentioning anything here? We're saying that this is something about the land. So we're saying, look at the words. We praise God, that God inherited us the land. A desirous good land, and he took us out of Egypt. Why did it say desirous and good land? Just say that he inherited us. Why are we adding in the good stuff? So the answer is, because anytime you're going to mention the land, you're going to have to now know the underlying concept that you have to know it's good in order to appreciate it. Otherwise, you're not going to appreciate it. No gift will happen to you if you're not looking forward to it. Back to the public screen. I have an email somewhere in my email list from Abby Goldberg telling me before she went to SEM how excited she was. You went in with the right attitude. Yesterday, a student called me. He's going to Israel, and he's going to a place that he knows is beneath his level of learning from a Hafter kid. He should have gone to a better place. So I asked him, why are you going to such a place? He goes, don't worry, Rabbi. I'm excited to go. I said, you know what? If you go in with the right attitude, don't worry about it. Doesn't make a difference. Then things go well. The concept is that when it comes to the land of Israel, in order to benefit from its greatness, its spiritual gift that God can give you, you have to want it. And this is not limited to land. This is everything that God can give us. Every gift that God can give us. In order for us to do it, we have to want it. God will give us gifts if we the right gifts, the correct gifts, the spiritually positive gifts, if we desire it beforehand for the right reasons. Otherwise, he's not going to do it. So this lesson is the spies went into Israel without desiring it. We've discussed in the past why. If I remember correctly, Stephen, your answer was that they were going from a spiritual world into a physical world, and they were not ready for the adjustment. The spies were not ready to make that adjustment, which means they weren't going in with a tremendously positive, enthusiastic attitude. You know what happens? They go there for 40 days, and the spiritual energy, the spiritual ear that makes everyone smart does not affect them at all. It cannot affect them because they didn't go with the right attitude. So when we want to speak about the land, what we're going to do is we're right away going to add in, by the way, it's a desirous land. It means we want it, and then we'll be able to get all the good and all of the spacious, which we'll have to see what that means soon, into this land. But the first thing is a person must desire it. The spies, even according to this interpretation, you can say that milk and honey meant positive. It doesn't make a difference. It didn't affect them positively. It means they went in there as great men. They were great men when they started this trip, but they came out of it and lost the opportunity. And this opportunity level is something we have to work on constantly for ourselves as well. We want certain things, but we have to know why we want it. And if we want it, we're really asking God for it. We want to find a prospective mate. We want to do successful in business. We want something else. Whatever we want, we have to desire it first, then we ask God correctly. Then when God sends us the gift, it will have a positive effect on us. But if we're not beforehand, as a prerequisite, that's why the word comes first, it's a desirous land. If we don't prerequisite first, nothing's going to happen. Now, one of the things that we're saying is that silence, but silence is not the only thing. The land, as we said, has good and spacious things. It means there's other areas as well. It's cute to say that the land can teach you how to know when to keep quiet and when not to keep quiet. But it's every moment in our lives. We have to look for things and know what we're going to be prerequisiting, prepping for. That's a better word. If we're prepping for it correctly, then it can have a positive effect. If we're not prepping for it correctly, it cannot have effect. Yes, go, Eric.
All right, quick question, because I'm just not understanding. The land of milk and honey is describing the land itself. These three characters,
Yes.
that you're talking about are the impact that they have, or that we have to come to the land with. Is that the point that you're saying? The
No,
land being desirable.
The first one, not the second two. Desirable has to come from us, but good.
It's based on our interpretation. The milk and honey is milk and honey, but we have to decide that the land is good. We have to decide that the land is spacious. That's a perception thing. That's not milk and honey. It's.
I hear what you're saying. I hear you. Okay, here you're saying good. You're coming from an American viewpoint. When the Torah calls it, that's not negatively. When the Torah calls it good, that has to. I like what you're asking though, because it'll clear for everybody else. It's an excellent point, by the way. I think it's wrong, but it's a great point. When the Torah calls something good, we said this years ago about, if you remember that, Stephen, when we discussed when the Torah calls someone pretty. Pretty does not mean limited to external beauty, because when the Torah labels something, it has to mean it in every essence of the word. So when the Torah labels the land good, it has to be in essence it's good. Not that we consider it that it can do good for us. Now we can lose out on that goodness, but it has to be in essence is good. Same thing with urachava when it's spacious. It means whatever the word spacious means multiple things, but it has to mean in its essence it is. That's when the Torah said those words. We, in benching, added the word chemdah, desirous, correctly, Eric. Then when we add the word desirous, that comes from us and that's on the human. But the toivu rachava, according to this interpretation, according to the Torah, is in its essence in itself good and spacious as well. I like your question. I just think it's wrong. Does it make sense what I'm answering?
100%.
Okay. So because the Torah, but now I'm saying how we can. Well, we will benefit from this good is how we go into it, and that's everything in our lives. That's a spouse. That's a job. Everything we do, if we're going in with the right attitude, then the benefit can be much greater. So usually, by the way, I have said this before, Stephen, if you remember. Usually, here we have some young people here. I don't know if anyone on the screen is dating, as far as the young crowd goes. Charles, you're part of the young crowd because you only look like you're 18 most of the time. But the rest of us are older here. I don't know if any of half the students here on the screen are actually actively searching for mates. Jake is not actively looking as far as I know, but he has to swat them off like flies because about every week someone's calling me, can I set him up with Jake? It's embarrassing. Every week they're calling me, oh, I heard you still talk to Jake, can you set me up with him? But I don't think Jake's active. Now, the one thing is, God set up a system we've discussed, Stephen, with people, that's what we'll call, for the American standpoint, as Eric said, falling in love with their wives. And then life reality hits them, which we won't go into because there are young people here who believe it goes on forever. With the married people here know that's a joke. But for the young people here, yes, it goes on forever. But so what happens? Why did God set the system up that way? So part of the reason we discussed the Kabbalistic writings bring down is because God gives you that gift at first to tell you, here, this is what it should get to. This is easy, this is fun, this is exciting. And now go work at it for 50 years and get back to that level. The problem in America, we're a generation of 15-second microwave food, so we don't try to get to that level. We just quit about 10 years into it. 7-year itch, we're done. We don't realize what we could get to. But the idea is that we're supposed to get to. But the first thing we set up that God gives us, that's a case of what God gives us. Eric's right. And the land is us desiring. I'm just saying the concept is that desiring is a prerequisite for appreciating most things. So normally we have to bring it upon ourselves. When it comes to marriage, since a sane person will never choose to live with someone else forever in a closed space on top of their parents. Oh, actually, okay, I don't want to get lost here and think we're talking about anything specifically here. But a person might not want to do that. So what God does is He gives the excitement into you. He gives it to you. Because a normal human being wouldn't do that. But when it comes to other areas in life, where on your own someone can do it, God said, okay, work at it. You get the desire, and I'll give you the gift, 100%. But that's the lesson here so far of this week's Pasha. The lesson of this week's Pasha is, Charles, just for the famous line from Cheers, Norm Peterson, because I'm into Cheers. Someone once tells him, Norm, Vera's a saint. He goes, yes, a Saint Bernard. You remember that one? I'm not saying that about anyone specifically, but that's famous Cheers line. Anyway, my wasted youth of watching and rewatching and rewatching and rewatching. That's not a glick on the computer. That's actually me repeating it, of watching Cheers over and over and over. Anyway, but the point is that there is an idea that when we bench and grace after meals. Now, Hubner wants to add on. The reason why this is so important, that if you don't speak about it, go back to the benching, Charles, please. We said before that the words in red, which now are not in red, were so obvious that in order for someone to fulfill the obligation, he must say those 4 words on the top line, or else he didn't fulfill the obligation. Now it comes out very simple. You know why? Because if we're going to praise the land, that's what the second blessing is a little bit about officially. If we're going to praise the land and quote the land, then the only way to fulfill the obligation is to say, by the way, it's a desirous, coveted, precious place that is inherently what God said, good and spacious. If you don't do those words, you didn't praise the land. Because the essence of it, the spies didn't do it. So as Charles, I don't know if I said it clearly before, when Joshua was writing up this verse, you know what he says? I'm going to fix up the mistake of the spies in my time. They didn't desire it, couldn't appreciate what's good and spacious. Therefore, me, when I'm going to write this blessing relevant to the land, I'm going to make sure right in the beginning to put it in there that, by the way, desire it first, and then you will get to appreciate the good and spacious part of it. Public screen, Charles, that's the end of the class for tonight. I am hoping, Stephen, that next week we're in downtown Brooklyn, but I have very little confidence based on what we said before the class. Very little confidence that we'll do it again on Zoom. But is there any other questions? Hermes, a question from you or your sister? Nothing at all.
Try to challenge anything that you're saying. I just have a question.
Don't turn this into a blue and white flag. I don't want to turn you into a state of Israel.
No, definitely not.
Get him, Jake.
I was just wondering, doesn't Rashi say in the beginning of the parsha that, that's why I was checking before. I was checking to see, because Rashi says that before they really left, they were ksherim at the time. So to say that through this pshat that you're saying is like that they were from the onset, like they just didn't appreciate things. So isn't that kind of not go within the way Rashi understands it?
Yes and no. So I could say no, but I could say yes. When Rashi said they were ksherim, there's a famous contradiction that later on Rashi says they left as evil people. That's a famous contradiction. So one of the answers is that when Moshe chose them, they were still good, but the moment they left Moshe's presence and began the trip, they were no good. So that still would be a contradiction to me if we want to mix me and you together. Moshe chose wise people. Wise people had a potential for silence, but for some reason, between him standing in front of them and them heading out to do the spy work, somewhere along the line, they became, Rashi's phrase, evil. Rishoyim, halalu. I don't know if I'm just quoting Rashi to say they're evil. They're still greater than me, obviously, but they became evil. But yes, at one point, it's very this